Hello, welcome to another edition of the Low Code Campfire. This is episode number 161 for August 30, 2024. Today we'll do notification wrap up and things that have been submitted and whatever else you want to talk about. This is an event we do every Friday, this hour, 10 a.m. Central Time. And we get together and talk about Plant an App and our experiences, and maybe we show off something that we've done, but mostly we just try to help each other work through any issues that you're facing as you're doing your low-code development. But everyone's welcome. It's all skill levels, beginners to expert. We record all these, put them on YouTube. So if you go to youtube.com/plantanap, you can get a hold of all this excellent content. We run this agenda week by week. We always say hello, and then we'll go around the campfire and we'll deal with anything that has been submitted or give you a chance to do first call. And along the way, we'll talk about contributions to our community website, feature requests. Sometimes we talk about our low-code playbook. I don't have anything from that today. Dark corners and ghost stories, but after an hour or so, we go into our afterglow segment. We turn off the recording, raise a virtual adult beverage, and enjoy each other for a little while longer. So do jump in, engage with us, show and tell, chat, or you can just get involved. We have an opportunity if you want to submit questions or topics in advance. You can use this QR code or just send an email to support@plantanap.com, and we'll put your topic on the agenda. Hello, all.
Good morning. Happy Friday.
Hello. Morning, everybody.
Good morning, all.
Morning.
Good morning.
Happy Friday, and we are for the U.S. based. We're heading into a holiday weekend, so it is a happy Friday. Full house today, or a good group. So thanks all for jumping in. I hope you brought something to talk about. Before I jump in, I'm inserting before first call. I'm going to do our version 126 check-in. We released this 2.5 months ago now, and it's just kind of an interesting thing for me. It's not that anybody's asked me, but I'm tracking adoption. So we're up a few more points for adoption. So 19% of the people who are at 125 have moved to 126. So it's gaining ground. Be interested either in your experiences or any reason why you're holding off. We like to the more people that we can have on the current version, the better. And we're kind of working towards limiting support for 1 year back. So it should be part of your ongoing processes to adopt the newer versions. Anyone with feedback today?
Going well for me. I've just the ones that I've done have been fresh installs, actually. And not an upgrade. A couple of the upgrades are kind of being held off. They're very large sites. Haven't done them yet, but they also want to go up to version 9. What is it now? 9.13.4. Yeah, of DNN. And so my experience has been it's working fine. The 126 running on 9.13 is going great. I'm not seeing any problems. I did mention in a ticket, and so I'll share with everybody else. We have a site that's got Razor Cart, an e-commerce system. And as soon as we put Plan an App on it, it busted all of the URLs for Razor Cart. But then I reinstalled Razor Cart and everything is fine. So not sure exactly what happened, but luckily it didn't result in a dead system. The upgrade, or rather the reinstall of Razor Cart did the trick. So some kind of URL provider, probably. You guys have one, they have one. And EasyDNN has one, so they were all stomping on each other.
Well, thanks for the feedback, and just reacting to that, just thinking about both your Razor Cart thing and the big sites that are coming up. It's always there's always a good procedure for thinking about how to do that. I understand it's not a casual, let's just throw the next version on. So we're always happy to talk that through either in this forum or support the good best practices for making sure you don't get into trouble with new versions. Anyone else? Great. Moving on. We do have first call. Anybody bring something that we need to address? Like to address? We do have a Campfire log, which was a term trademarked by Mark. That'll be our next thing if we have no first call.
Uh, well, I'll jump in
Jump
again.
in.
The last time I talked about APIs, and you helped me with a couple of APIs, where we've got a cool project where the client has a reservation system that we built. Again, this is the one that's on Razor Cart, and the events that they're reserving, they just used because they were using Razor Cart anyway. They created products of the events, and then you just buy a product. And things like what entree do you want to have are things like you would normally do with a size and color of t-shirt kind of a options. So we had to figure out. I had to figure out how Razor Cart was storing all of that information, and I did. Then created an API for getting a list of events, and then that spits out the products that are currently there for sale, quote unquote. And then these options like meal selections and things like that, plus their name and who, the attendees that are going to be there, all that stuff. So I'm serving that up via APIs. So the client wants an app to do the same thing. To be able to use and an app in its true sense, not a shortcut to the browser to get to the same information, but actually an iOS and an Android app. So those folks that are making the app for me are calling the Planet App API, grabbing the event list, displaying it. When the person selects it on their phone, it goes out again, grabs another API to get the details of the event, shows that. And when they say they want to register, it goes back to the API. It goes to another API to pull the options. Then it asks the person to select which options they want, and then it goes to the gateway to pay the money. So very cool. The piece that's missing yet, and I haven't yet built it, and I'm a little nervous, is actually taking the information back. Now that the customer has selected all these things via the app, and the app goes to the payment gateway and gets the money and the transaction is successful, the next thing I would like to do is I would like to dump all that information back to the server in a table that I'm going to keep. I'm not going to try to integrate it back into Razor Cart to make it look like a Razor Cart transaction, but I'm going to just have another table there that says, okay, here's your reservations. And what I don't know is the API side of putting information in. Getting worked out great, but I'm a little nervous about the put. How should the person provide the information? Should they do a query string with each piece? Or should they do one query string with a JSON? Or, I mean, I'm not sure what the mechanisms are for that.
Right. Well, very cool. And so first of all, your idea of storing the information back in a table, even if you were going to go into Razor Cart, that was going to be the first piece of advice that I gave. If your API serves as receiving that information from the app and stores it someplace, if it doesn't need to provide the Razor Cart stuff, gives you the opportunity to decouple that. So you've got it in your table and you can now work with it to push it into Razor Cart, right? So it gives you a little bit of the ability to kind of progress through that if you decide to do it. But you said you're not, so that's fine. It's going into a table. My guess is that if you get them to provide that, if you were to set the API up as a as a post API as compared to a get, and get them have the app person post it as a JSON structure. It kind of gives you it's quite flexible and easy for you to handle. And I'll illustrate here a little bit if I can get logged in on my test system. But it's essentially the same thing that you're doing as you define the get. And it's nice to hear the story that you're able to define that you were defining the first part of it pretty easily. But here in APIs, my system was sound asleep here this morning. So you have this choice of the HTTP method, and typically that would be a post where they're going to send you stuff. That's the kind of the definition. Whatever you're going to call it. On the input parameters, you could have a text that is the name something like order JSON or whatever you would like to call it, and that it would be of a type text, and you're assuming that they're going to pass you a nice JSON structure. From an action standpoint, so that you can work with it, you would add an action that I'm sorry, before I go on, I wanted to make sure so I called this order JSON. I'm going to copy it. If you go to actions and add an action that is parse JSON into tokens, you can provide the order JSON like this and maybe create a base token called order. And so now everything that they pass you, regardless of whatever they call it, if they have order ID, you're going to be able to access that by order :ID. Or order description, it would be order :description. It's going to create all those tokens for you. And then from your perspective, if you're going to write to a Plant and App entity, you would do something like create new my order table, whatever you're create a record. And maybe the only other thing that you're going to have to think about is doing a load user, so that you're operating. APIs kind of operate anonymously until you do a load user, and in order to create a record, you're going to need the rights of some user to be able to do that. So you might need to have a user in your system that's designated, and then you do a load user action. But with this kind of a structure, you're going to be able to get back from that. You tell them what you guys agree on what the JSON structure is going to be, and what its name is going to be, and then you can just use that name in your input parameter and be able to parse it out and work with it quite easily.
The thing that's confusing is, oh, I'm sorry.
No. I was going to ask for more input, and Patrick, I'm going to put Patrick on the spot in a minute, but you can jump in.
Oh, okay. First thing, yes, it makes sense to do the parse. Ultimately, I could just have a simple table of JSON receipts, basically, where I just take whatever they gave me and drop it into a table and deal with it later. So that would be the first thing, right? So
yep.
I don't have to do the parse now. But secondly, and mostly because I'm procrastinating, because I'm a little nervous about it, what the order is, and this would be the case in any kind of order entry system for events, is that there's multiple attendees. So a person could say, yeah, I want to, I want to be there, and then I want to add these 3 guests. So the order will be basically 3 guests and all of their options. So I would think I've got basically an array of attendees in the JSON.
Hmm.
Uh, and I'm saying that like I know what I'm talking about, but I don't know what that structure is.
Yep.
And how do I and not only that, but some days they'll ask for an entree selection, and some days they won't. Some days they'll ask, they'll sell raffle tickets for the during the event, and some days they won't. So I'm going to have a variable list of options that will be coming in. Again, so I'm not positive how one deals with that. If you could point me in the right direction, I can try to figure that out. But at least with the put or with the post, I can at least grab the JSON that comes in and dump it into a record and deal with it later.
Absolutely. And I think you're even if you had gone down the path that I was going here with parsing them out and doing stuff with individual elements, storing the JSON is a wonderful idea because that if there's extra information that you didn't anticipate or if things go wrong, you've got that to work with and to debug. So storing that and handling it later makes sense. So if you're working with your developer and you say, pass me this JSON and put everything in it, uh, um, presumably I mean, just what you said, the array of attendees with their options, whatever, however he wants to structure it, unless you have a strong opinion about how to receive it, letting him just put all the information into uh, that array and then you figuring it out later is certainly one way to work with it.
Got it. Cool.
So now, Patrick, I was soliciting your opinion if you hadn't, if I missed anything, or anyone else.
Yeah, I don't personally think so. If there's varying options, could you, I don't know if that's necessary, but could you ask them to specify what they're sending, in an initial, I'm just thinking out loud here. I don't really know how that would work, but
I think ideally, I think you're on the right track.
yeah.
Ideally, the as you're working with a developer, if you got them to provide, here is the most expansive and complete transmission that we're going to send you. It's going to have attendees, it's going to have prices, it's going to have options, whatever it is. If they sent you a fully filled out transaction, then it would give you something to um, develop against, so that when they provide, if there's not options or not raffle tickets or not whatever, you're I mean you'll have some idea of what to anticipate. Um, Probably the other um, uh, I would just wanted to point out that there's another token here that might be useful. Um, on the input side, there is a thing called the raw input token. So if they're passing you anything that you don't know about, you could also store the raw input. Um, or if you're having trouble getting it to work, you can start seeing what it is that they're passing you. So it's ideally they're going to pass you what you asked for, and um, you'll be able to just store it away. But yeah,
And
anyone
so
else do it? Hmm.
the response that or the order save and test when you do a save and test on the gets, you get a pop-up and then you can click the get the response. If you pass anything in, like I did a get where it had an ID, the product ID, to get the details, and then when you do that you see what the response is, but then in the box below it it says here's some example code that has the
Mm-hmm.
um, that has the call in it. So that same call would be in the sample for the post. So I can say, okay, now here,
Here's your
call
example. Yep.
this.
Yep.
Got it. Okay.
And you might build up what you consider to be a good JSON structure for testing with, right? If you think that if you have any idea of what you're expecting, you can build that with something like Code Beautify or whatever JSON editor you might want to use, and then you can use that for your own testing until they start hitting your endpoint.
Got it. Oh, that'd be great. All right. Well, this is exciting. I'll be coding some of this today.
Excellent.
Hi,
Anyone else?
Dale.
Yes.
Dale,
Hey.
Jerry here. Just wanted to expand on the last conversation you guys have just had for a few minutes. I do this every day of my life, and this is nowhere near the challenge that you might think it is. And I'll offer myself up for assistance as the time when you guys need it the most. But I can tell you what we do. And we give the variables that they deposit.
Jerry, unfortunately, you're kind of coming and going unless it's just me.
I apologize. As usual, I'm driving, and who's to say if I'm in a good area or not? Let me, if everybody can hear this, let me cut it short and just say I'm here to help when you're ready to do that. I do it every day, and it's easy. It's easy.
Thanks for that. I agree. I think Planet App has made it very easy to do APIs. Think about them at a very high level versus, trying to get in and code the pattern. So it's cool. Nice. All right. Good question. Let's move on since Mark, are you still on the list? Yes, you are. You're here. And you had a question about using and manipulating lists. And it was a nice big question.
I've never been accused of being brief.
And I've kept true to my word of what I try to do with Campfire. I try and host it, but not do a lot of preparation. So I can't say that I put a lot of thought into your question. So we'll just run through it together here. So you're trying to create a list of photos and scores and rankings, and you're using create list from SQL, and you're trying to select just a copy of one of those records and change it and add it back to the list. And then at your end question, what exactly is a list? That might be an easier thing to answer, and yet not. I don't know if my answer will be of much help. So I'm going to start there. What is a list? When you create list from SQL, it's in C# terms, I believe it is an object, but it's an internal structure, and you're not going to have a lot of aside from the actions that we give to you. I mean, it is it's a thing that gets created in the context, but it's not a SQL table, not a SQL temp table. It's something that it actually pulls out the content at that time. So, for example, you can create a list from SQL, you can create a list from Excel or CSV, or there's many different sources. They all create the same kind of a list, but it's an in-memory structure that you can iterate over. So that. Since it's not a SQL temp table, you're not going to be able to interact with it like with SQL. That's maybe the first question.
Right. Where I was going with that was, is there a way to query that list? Like a SQL query or something else. There wasn't an action for it specifically, unless I missed it. And that's part of my question. Did I miss it?
Well, there's an action to query it. Is that what your question is?
Yes.
So not directly, no, but there are a couple of things. Let's go look. In a workflow, let's discard what I was doing here. create lists from SQL. So a couple of things, and I got bit by this earlier in the week. I was doing a thing, so I'm just going to remind you of some features. So in this, you say that you're going to do a SQL query. It's going to return some records, and it puts them into the list. Just a reminder that, of course, you have to provide a list name what's going to get done. But this is the one that I missed out on, clear before loading. So I was doing working from one list, creating another list. If you don't clear before loading, it continues to add to your list. So that can kind of make a forever loop or a very long loop, and that's what I did. So you're going to typically want to use that checkbox. But this is the one that one of the ways to create a list, and then the question is, what can you do with lists? So if we go to lists and objects, there's a bunch of actions so you can add to it. Here's a bunch of create things. You can extend, meaning add another column or a property to a row. You can remove things and you can sort them. So there's the things to explore. I wanted to point out too, there is a Campfire contribution, and it's got some old naming because it's been around for a while. But in terms of exploring some of the things that you can do in the contributions, it's called manipulating entities. We used to call lists entities, and so there's a whole topic for you to go and explore ways to create and add and modify. And remap lets you, I think that might be worth exploring here. Remap has a filtering functionality, so if you wanted to nope.
What you can, so that's what I was going to say is that in the for each execute actions for each, you have the ability to filter, and the other one is, and remove list entries has a obviously that has to have a filter because you have to determine which ones are going to be removed. So there are ways of filtering it. So I'm wondering if there's some way that you could filter for the value you want and put it for the record you want and put that into a separate list, something along those lines.
So one of the things that I did successfully in a recent project was once you have a list, if you want to be able to select against it, it's possible to work with that list with SQL. Let me think about what I'm the action I'm thinking of is list to JSON will let you take your list and flip it back into a JSON array, which can then be, SQL understands what to do with JSON. You can write a SQL that will treat that as a table, which you can then select based on a normal where clause. So that would be another way to look at it. And then when you get output from that, like if you find the item, you indicated you were looking for one particular photo, one particular row, whatever the criteria was, and now that you have that, if you I think your original statement was you want to be able to add to your list. So if you were, whether you use the filtering or that Patrick suggested or the SQL that way, once you have the record that you need, you can add that back to the bottom of your first list.
Yeah, that's all good. I am curious about the efficiency of the options. Like, if I were to execute actions against the list, if I were to iterate through all of them, how efficient would that be? And you just showed me that I can filter when doing that execute actions against the list. And I didn't remember that was there, that filter. So that would actually, I think that would probably be pretty efficient since the list is already created.
Yeah, and I
And I
think
would
it
know in
comes,
memory.
part of the question is, how big are the lists? If
Mhm.
if you have 100 items, it's going to do it probably pretty quickly. If you
Mhm.
100,000 items, it's going to be, might not be the most efficient way.
Well, that's what I'd like to understand because, if this is happening in memory, it could be pretty fast, even if the numbers are high. That was a good alternative to send it to JSON and then use SQL against the JSON. But that does seem like it's creating more work
Yes.
to then, get the information into SQL again when it already came out of there and the
My
subset was already created. Yeah.
my best guess, without doing the performance testing, would be that this filtering is going to be quite efficient, and better than the option the SQL option. But the SQL option would have, I mean, now you have the full power of whatever you can query in SQL. So uh, likes and sound decks and, I mean, so,
Okay.
but if this gives you a straightforward field value comparison to filter down to the thing that you're after.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, not knowing this aspect of this action, what I did was I went back, I created a second create a list from SQL, and in my SQL I just narrowed it down to the one record I was looking for. But the reason I didn't really want to do that is because the SQL that does that is expensive as far as time and cycles. It calculates a lot and does a lot of joins, and I just thought, hey, I've already put this information together. Why can't I get something out of what I've already assembled? So I have a solution, but I like this better. I will be redoing it. Now's the time for me. So yeah, I appreciate you looking at it.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Did we raise any questions about lists that would be worth hitting?
All right, kick that log out of the fire.
All right. I threatened to do notification system wrap up, and I know that this, not a lot of you were watching this live, but we spent 3 episodes of Low Code Cafe doing notification system, and I got darn close, but didn't finish the alarm bell portion of what I was doing. So I wanted to just hit on it here quickly and then field any questions if anybody who has watched, whether live or on replay. So a couple of things. One, we have plans in our page builder theme, and this is a hacked version of page builder, to add a menu bar. Let me see if I can find this area here. So I think we're going to call it menu bar right, but to be able to put something up into the header that, like an alarm bell here. And since we didn't get it done in time for the episode, I made a copy of the in the theme. Let's see, what did I do? In our page builder, I made a copy of default BS5 and added my initials to it so that it would be protected from being overwritten, but added my own custom pane to page builder. So this is something about what it's going to look like in the future, but it's not our development team's work. It's not. I'm not. Notice that this is a very tall menu. It kind of messed with the structure of it a little bit. I'm not a theme guy, so I can hack it but not perfect it. Anyway, so what I did then is put a form up in there that the form, let's see if I can edit it. The form has nothing more than a button. The button is, the title of it is coming from a token. So this token is returning back how many notifications do I have? And the button is only showing if there are notifications, more than 0 notifications. And for my button, the button icon I used Font Awesome. I don't often use this, so I don't know if you've seen it as well, but you can pick a button icon, and so being able to say that that it's an alarm bell, and then I put float start, which makes it move to the left-hand side. So now I'm getting this title, which is the number of notifications, that it shows up this way. We get the bell and the number of notifications, and not a lot of effort to make that happen. And then finally, the button's only action is to go to my page where I show off the alerts. So it just from a functionality standpoint, we're seeing if there are alerts, it's telling us how many. You click the button, it goes to the alerts page, and they're there. Nothing rocket science about that, but I thought it was a neat technique. And when
Very cool.
And so, for example, I've got my new alerts and my all alerts for all of the things that I'm alerting for. And so if I acknowledge this one about Patrick's email changing, notice that the alerts drops down to 1, and that now shows up on the all page. Again, this is my new alerts listing. I'll bring that up. The button is pretty uncomplex. The acknowledge button changes the notification to say that it has been acknowledged, and it gets the date on it. But then initializing form, the menu bar form, that's where that alert is. So by initializing it, it causes the token to recompute, and so that gets it to drop down from 2 to 1. I'm refreshing the listing so that it drops off of, excuse me, so that this is the all alerts listing, so it causes it to appear on the all alerts, and refreshing the current listing so it comes off of the new one. So the result is you click the button and everything happens all at once. And when it dropped to 0, it went away. So I think that puts a wrap on it. Were there any questions? Anybody who watched any part of that, or the notification system? Anything that came up that you'd like to see addressed? The end result of this was pretty cool. As changes were being made to whatever your system was, you get an activity, and here you can see the change. The activity was split out to notifications according to subscription. So there are 3 different notifications being made by that one thing that I just did. One of the notifications was sent immediately because I'm set up to send immediately, but Patrick and Bogdan don't get notified until a later time, so they're being queued. And the subscriptions, if we look at them, Patrick gets his at 4 in the afternoon, and so he'll get notified about that later on today. And Bogdan doesn't get notified until, well, his is also close to 4 o'clock today. So that was the end impact of all that. But if anybody browsing to the site could see the alarm bell, if Patrick were to browse to the site, he would see a notification sitting up in his header bar. That. Okay, so that puts the wrap on that. I threw a new contribution out on the Campfire website. Anybody who's here today and you don't have permissions to get onto the Campfire website, let me know. I'd be happy to add you. The idea is anything that we do that might be reusable by somebody else, we can put them out here as a contribution. And so if you need to do this thing, we can point you to it, or you can find it. And if you have rights, you can go see how it was implemented. And so that's why you might want to have rights. Lots of things you can just use directly, but some things it's worth exploring. So this contribution just is a token that lets you get stuff before and after. So we have this sample string 1 with the delimiter of dash, and so you get everything before the first dash and everything after the first dash. If we change this to be the delimiter to be string, then you get everything before string and after string. So just a nice little functionality if you're trying to parse strings with delimiters. Hopefully somebody will find some use for that.
That's nice, Dale.
And that's just a little bit of JavaScript in a workflow and turned into a workflow token. So at the end of the day, it's a little bit of JavaScript, and maybe you could do that more directly, but this makes it very reusable. All right, we're going to have our first ever Campfire games. The Campfire games is I'm throwing out a challenge. If you have your favorite inline help that is horrible, and you would like to submit that as a most improved, how to improve it. If you create you got to be on 125 or higher. So 125 or 126. Pick an action that you think is that could be most improved, and create a feature request. What the old text says, what it really should say, and anybody that I mean, I think we might have some keychains or something that we're giving away for the winners, but we'll vote on them. Anything that is identified as something that should be improved. And of course, I'm going to shamelessly steal your work, put them in as improvements to the product. We want to improve the help text, and we're shamelessly asking for your help to do it. Anyway, we'll have fun with it. I will provide a keychain to the winner. So,
so basically, you're asking us to take some of the documentation and rewrite it.
Yeah, inline help. That
Yep.
I'm focusing on not the whole thing, but just for example. I mean, I'm going to pick something at random here. It doesn't matter, but I'll bet we can find a way to improve this. So if I were to go to my test site and come on. Doesn't matter if you're staring at some action this week and it looks like it needs improvement. I'm going to do a workflow here and bring up an action at random.
So, but that does imply that you know what the action should be doing.
Well, that is, and I am going to read this stuff. I mean, I'll create update token, for example. It says, if we add, it says expressions to tokenize supports tokens. Well, do you know what to do? Is that clear enough? We have this tokenized token name, and it's this inline help here that I'm talking about. If in some cases we're woefully short on explaining what something should do. In other cases, it was written by somebody who maybe has English not as their primary language, or we flat made a typo. So if you see one of those and you call it out to us, we will fix it in 126. And you might get a keychain.
That's a good idea, Dale. You're giving us license to complain a little bit too. Which, I'm usually kind of
Positive
reluctant to
feedback.
do that.
Yeah, but do we really need license to complain? We have no problem doing that.
Can I make a little general contribution to this topic at the moment?
Whatever inspires you.
Okay. Two things that I have often thought I wish were here when looking at an action. One would be if there's going to be some inline help, or say it differently, if there's things we should know about the action, it would be very helpful if there were a link to the online documentation that describes, the whole story, the whole help that is provided online. So, I mean, we get a little snippet here of help, and it's always helpful. But I sure wish I knew I could get to the full documentation on this action quickly.
I think that Dale, I think that's a something that we have as a goal to get to. We've talked about it at least before, so.
I absolutely, and yet
Yeah.
there's no, I don't want to give anyone false hope. I don't think there's
Yeah.
a current initiative to do that, but that absolutely makes sense. We to go from our document, from our inline, from our action to our help. Absolutely.
Thank you. The second thing that I sometimes wish were there, and it might be because of my own simple mind that I think that I need it, but in the places where a token is expected or being interacted with, it might be nice to have a little note there that says square brackets expected or square brackets not expected here. There's a rule of thumb that's pretty valid, on when they should be there and when they shouldn't, and you can pick up on that over time. But there's a few exceptions where putting the square bracket in to get the value of a token isn't the right way to do it in that case. So yeah, if it could just say square brackets expected, or maybe a symbol, something.
So you're absolutely right. This is one of the areas that beginners struggle with the product. I know I did. In support, I see it as well, that it's not uncommon to say, well, no, you need square brackets here, or you don't. I don't see us going through because there are hundreds of actions and with dozens of parameters, and many of them support tokens. I don't see us being able to go through and add a expectation on all of those. It would become a huge project that isn't. There's probably better things for us to be doing, meaning you'd probably get more value out of some of the other things that we're working on. So good idea that we probably can't do. So I would challenge, I think maybe the thing that we can do is anything that doesn't follow the rule, that would be a great place to improve the help. And then we should
be a good starting place.
We should do a better job at
that action that you're looking at right there. I see there's a place for tokens on the left side. says tokens and then token name, you could just put square brackets right around that token name on the right. That would do it. But I already heard your answer.
Yeah. No, I understand. It could be, it absolutely could be done. So now I'm having fun with this one. I mean, this is probably one of the most core actions that we all use. You got to create tokens. Patrick, what does it mean when it says optionally it can tokenize values recursively?
It means that if your returned value has a token in it, you can either have that token remain as is or replaced.
It does. That is what, but I don't know that that's the clearest way that
No.
could have said that. So to illustrate, so this, depending on number of recursions, if you leave it as one, it's going to come, it'll do the interior one, name will get resolved. And then if you did two, then after name got resolved, then test whatever the result was would get resolved. So I mean, it's a neat feature. It's just, I don't know, we did a great job of explaining it.
I use that one a lot.
Yep.
Mhm.
Do you know if you put a high number in that recursion count, does it keep going even if it, if you put 99 there, but you only have 3 levels deep, does it stop after when it doesn't find anymore?
I don't know.
I think that's correct. But yeah, I guess.
I mean, I think so the question is, in terms of efficiency, is it important for that number to be set? And so, Patrick, you're putting forward that once there's no more brackets, it would stop.
I'm pretty sure, yeah, but I can't state that equivocally. So,
right. Versus if it goes in a tight loop for 97 more times doing nothing, I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I just thought we just talked about that via a ticket, another matter, and the AI thinks that it's going to loop around, so it's less efficient. So try to get the number of recursions correct.
Yeah, I knew we went back and forth on that. I couldn't remember what the end answer was, but I think as a best practice, setting it to a number that's sufficient for what you expect to find there is worthwhile. And always worth it to think about it, right? If you only expect one expansion, or by the way, it's possible to do 0 expansions. If you need your token to come out this way without being expanded at all, by putting 0, you can then use that to insert into some other, like if you're trying to build a template that's going to be expanded eventually, you're going to want to say 0 recursion so it doesn't do it prematurely. So anyway, yeah, if you expect 1 or 2, and as a developer you put a 2 there, that's great. If it could be layers upon layers, then put 9 or 99 and get it to, if it's unknown, put a high number, but if you know, put a low number.
So Dale, how did you want us to submit our suggestions for?
Yeah, so going back, I just took the easiest path to say, make a feature request that says, here's what this old text says, and that'll help me find it, right? Because if you just provide new text so just copy and paste. Here's what it used to say, but here's what I think it should say. And, I promise everyone that you look at, I will review and submit into for development, right? I might tinker with your wording if there's a broader context that I happen to know about, but I think we can improve spellings. And if you find a bad hyperlink, there's some hyperlinks to our old documentation. We've tried to kill those off, but if there's whatever you find in the next week, we'll, I mean, and this is an open thing. You're welcome to submit them anytime, but if you want to chance at a keychain, do it this week.
Hey, Dale.
Yeah.
This is related, but if you recall, what I found tremendously helpful was some of the spreadsheet documentation that you had on the API calls. You know, like to open a modal using a JavaScript link or something like that. So my question, and I understand you're looking to improve your inline documentation, which is great. Have you ever thought about some interim kind of community notes sort of thing, where it's not your official documentation, but that we can go and add update, kind of like a wiki, so that we can go add an update, and then that you could use to pull from to improve your existing documentation.
I like it.
So it's not official, but so it's editable, kind of like the Campfire and so many the other assets you have, which are fantastic. But this might give us a resource to, hey, when we trip across something, throw our notes somewhere, and then it allows us to refer to something, but then at the same time gives you, as an organization, the basis to make it official, and, clean it up and so on and so forth.
Matt, I think that's an excellent idea.
Well, thank you. I'm going to leave now. I'm done. Gonna go take a nap.
I mean, this sounds like something that we could very doable. We could create an entity on Campfire or community and just community notes. Absolutely, probably Campfire, so we can restrict it to the people who. You guys aren't going to put ugly things up on the website. We can't just open it up to the world. But the same, if you have a login on Campfire, and be able to add to community notes, would be, I mean, be very straightforward for us, for you, very straightforward for us, and then we could review them and get them incorporated into the documentation. So I will take that as an action item.
Cool. Cool.
That's my homework. All right. We have 2 minutes. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we missed today? Well, in which case, I'm going to find my end slide and call it. So thank you all for your participation in Low Code Campfire for today. We'll do it again next week. We're going to hang around for a few more minutes, or I think Patrick will. I'm at an undisclosed location and have to be hitting the road, but Patrick's going to hang out around for a few minutes and do Afterglow. So do stop and enjoy chatting with each other. And I appreciate you guys, you all showing up week by week. See you next time.